Hello, my dear friends. First, I want to explain why you may have noticed I'm wearing ear pods. It's not because I'm one of those types of people that sleeps in ear pods and wears them 24 hours a day, so I shouldn't miss any phone calls. I'm wearing them because I believe the quality of the recording is better when I wear ear pods. That is an aside. I read something shocking a few days ago, and I want to comment on it. I'm surprised that I didn't read anybody in the media that made the same observation that I have. You know that there's been riots going on in America for the last 2 months. One of the hot spots is Portland, Oregon. Last week, the rioters attempted to set fire to a police precinct, and there were police inside, and they blocked the exits while the officers were inside, so they should not be able to escape. To burn people alive is like one of the most atrocious and animalistic crimes that one can imagine. It's horrific to burn people alive. So the mayor of Portland, I guess, realized that he has to say something finally about that things are getting out of hand. So he made the following statement. When you commit arson with an accelerant in an attempt to burn down a building that is occupied by people who you have intentionally trapped inside, you are not demonstrating, you are attempting to commit murder. Period. End of statement. This statement is, to me, is mind-boggling, because it's like he's telling a chiddush to the people. In case you didn't realize it, I guess you thought that you were demonstrating, but in case you didn't realize it, you know, if the policeman had died in the precinct, you would have been committing murder. It's like telling somebody who takes a gun and points it to somebody's head, and he pulls the trigger, and by luck or by hashgacha, the gun does not go off and the person survives. So you tell the person, hey, maybe you didn't realize it, that by doing that, if it actually had gone off, you would have been a murderer. Well, thank you very much. Everybody knows that if you burn down a police precinct with policemen, it's murder. The statement should have been 1,000 times more powerful than to tell them, you're not demonstrating, you're committing murder. Okay, but that's not the worst part. The next thing that he said was, don't think for a moment that if you are participating in this activity, you are not being a prop for the re-election campaign of Donald Trump, because you absolutely are. You will be used in ads to help Donald Trump be re-elected. Now, irrespective of what you think about Donald Trump, there are people that love Donald Trump, there are people that despise Donald Trump, there are people that think that it'll be a tragedy if he's elected, there are people that think it'll be wonderful. Doesn't make a difference, whatever side of the divide you're on. But to equate Donald Trump's election with the horror of murdering innocent policemen in a police station, or to introduce that as one of the terrible consequences, and he made it seem like that's the worst thing it's going to be, is that not only did you attempt to commit murder, but you might actually promote Donald Trump to become president. That is such a terrible and serious crime. He's belittling in such an unbelievable way the level of depravity of setting fire to a building where policemen live policemen are inside and blocking the exit, and saying that what makes it so terrible is that it may lead to the election of Donald Trump as the president. No, what makes it so terrible is that is animalistic, it's depravity, it's one of the most horrific forms of murder possible. And not one person, but I don't know how many people were in the precinct to set the precinct on fire and block the exits. So it shows the value system of Mayor Ted Wheeler, and I'm completely baffled and surprised why nobody in the media called, at least I didn't see it, nobody called him out on this, to point out that his sense of values is unbelievably skewed. So I want to comment on this in the context of this week's Parsha. The Torah says, you are the children of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you should not engage in hiskodedu. Hiskodedu, the word hiskodedu comes from gedud, which means to cut, to separate, to sever. So the plain meaning is that you should not cut your skin, and you should not tear out your hair as a way of mourning. The Amorim used to do that, Rashi says. So the Jewish people should not do that. They're the children of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. they don't engage in such practices when somebody passes away. But the Gemara says that Los Iskodu has a second meaning as well, and that is that you should not become agudos. You shouldn't separate the community into different segments. The community needs to be united. And the practical application is there should be one Bezdin rendering halachic decisions for a community, because otherwise the community is divided. Unfortunately, we're in Golos, and we have different segments of the community, and it's described that some of them are Hasidic, some are Sephardim, some are Ashkenazim, some come from Poland, some from Germany. It's not possible anymore to unite the Jewish community in a appropriate way. But ideally, there should be no division in the community. Los Iskodu. So the question is, these two meanings of Los Iskodu seem completely unrelated to each other. They have nothing to do with each other. One is that the community should be united. The other is that you're not allowed to mutilate your body when somebody passes away. So why are they combined into the same word of Los Iskodu? Why should it be used to convey two different messages? I think the answer is as follows. In the beginning of the Parashas, the Torah says, behold, I place before you today a bracha and a klala, a blessing and a curse. So the Kotzker Rebbe asks a very insightful question. Re'eh is singular. The plural would be ru'u. Re'eh means behold, you should see, as the individual. Anochi nosim lifnechem is a plural, lifnechem, before you. So why does the pasuk switch syntax and move from the individual to the plural? So the Rebbe says a brilliant answer. He says God gives the same world to everybody. It's Anochi Nosim Lifnechem. I give you, everybody has the same world. But how you perceive it is re'eh, is individualistic. Each person sees it how he wants. Some people see it as a bracha, and some people see the world as a klala. The Jewish people, and the pasuk goes on to say that when they entered Eretz Yisrael, they had to stand on Har Grizim and Har Evel, and the bracha and klala were given on Har Grizim and Har Evel. Har Grizim was where the bracha was given. Har Evel was where the klala, the curse, was given. The Rav Hirsch points out, Har Grizim, even today, is a mountain of beautiful foliage, covered with foliage. Har Evel is barren and desolate. So Rav Hirsch says that here, Har Grizim and Har Evel, they're standing right next to each other. They're nurtured by the same rain, by the same weather conditions. And they both have the same environmental opportunities. But one is a blessing, one is a bracha, and one is a klala, which shows that the extremes that are possible to have in life, the very same circumstances could be, for one person they're a bracha, for somebody else it's a klala. And what determines whether life is a bracha or klala? It's the re'eh. It's how you see it. If you're a positive person, if you see the good, if you appreciate the blessings of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, then life is a bracha. But if you're a negative person and all that you see is vulgarity, then it's a klala. We're witnessing now in America the movement of rioting and looting is a movement of negativity, of seeing America as a horrible country, that it was built on evil, and there's this effort to cancel culture and to uproot the history of American society. America is a magnificent country, and it was the founding of democracy took place in America, and it set an example for the rest of the world. But there are people that see America as not as a bracha, but as a klala. So when a person passes away, there are two ways to experience. The Amorim experience that as klala, that it means it's a reflection that the world is no good, that the world is rotten, that the world is vulgar and ugly, because the end is death. That's the end of all life, and therefore life has absolutely no value. And that's why they would mutilate themselves to reflect the way that was a reflection of how they felt about their perception of life, that it's ugly, it's vulgar, just as they mutilated their own bodies. But Klal Yisrael are instructed, because you are banim atem l'Hashem Elokechem, you are the children of God. You have to live your lives as royal children. You are royalty, and you have close relationship to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's true that death is painful, but death is not the end of a person's existence. The neshama is eternal. There is a period of mourning, which is important and justifiable, but in the end, life is beautiful. Life is a bracha, and that's the stark contrast between those people who engage in los iskodedu, in mutilation, and Klal Yisrael, who are forbidden to do so because banim atem l'Hashem Elokeichem. The restriction or the interpretation of los iskodedu that you should not fractionate the Jewish people is because just as there's a human body, there's also the body of Klal Yisrael. Klal Yisrael are one united entity. Every day in davening, or not when we lay in davening, we say, Acheinu kol beis Yisrael, our brothers, all of the Jewish people. We're all brothers. We don't even know the people in Klal Yisrael. There's millions of Jews, but it's Acheinu kol beis Yisrael, our brothers, the entire Jewish community, because Klal Yisrael is one united body. And when there is machlokus, when there is division, when there is anger, when there is animosity, so just as a person can mutilate a body, so then when there's division in Klal Yisrael, it's a mutilation of the body of Klal Yisrael. And that's the connection between the two meanings of los iskodedu. There's a los iskodedu where a person sees vulgarity and mutilates his own body, and there's a los iskodedu where people see the worst in each other, where people are arguing, where people are angry, where people hurl insults against each other, where people villainize one another, and that leads to terrible arguments and divisions, and brothers hate each other. So that is also, that's just as bad, maybe it's even worse, a worse form of los iskodedu, because it's not only tearing asunder one's own body, but it's destroying the body of Klal Yisrael. What we are, and therefore that's why los iskodedu, the two meanings of los iskodedu are closely related to each other. What we're witnessing today in America is los iskodedu of American civilization or American society in the most horrific way. There's a mutilation of American culture. There's the cancel culture, and it's being done with anger, with hatred, with animosity, with riots, with vulgarity. In many of the riots, you look, there's curse words used, painted all over buildings. And the name of some of these splinter groups has curse words, obscenities embedded in it. And there's a philosophy that America was built on evil. It's an evil country. And then on the other hand, there are people that recognize that America is a beautiful society. America was the basis for democracy. So there's the Hagrizim view and the Harevel view. There's the Bracha and the Kloa. And what's taking place today in America is because of the animosity that exists, especially in the world of politics, and in the riots that are taking place, we're seeing the mutilization of American society, and you see how the extent that it goes, the divide, the political divide, the anger, the hatred that one side has for the other is so extreme that the mayor of Portland could, while talking about the horrific attempted crime of burning policemen alive, he introduces into that, you might lead to Donald Trump becoming elected. The Chumash says in Parashas Vayishlach, Yaakov Avinu says to Esav, Im Lavan Garti. So Rashi famously says, I lived with Lavan. Rashi says Garti is the gematria of Taryag. The letters of Garti, if you rearrange them, is Tafresh Yud Gimel, which is the amount 613, which is the amount of mitzvos that are in the Torah. So Rashi says, Im Lavan Garti, the Taryag mitzvah shamarti. I lived with Lavan, but I still kept the Taryag mitzvahs. The plain meaning is that Yaakov is saying, even though I lived with Luban, I still observed the Taryag mitzvahs. But some of the Mefarshim say it's not even though, it's that I learned from Luban how to keep the Taryag mitzvahs. Because when, just like a person could learn from a tzaddik, a person could learn from a rasha. From a tzaddik you learn what to do. From a rasha you learn what not to do. From a tzaddik you learn what it means to live a life of bracha. From a rasha you learn when you see the klala, when you see destruction, when you see the consequences of hatred and animosity and immorality and the decadence, and you see that it's klala, it's like harevel, it's desolate, it's barren, so then that becomes a motivation to observe the Taryag mitzvahs. And as we witness the terrible losis godadu that's taking place in our society, the mutilation of, just like there's a body of Klal Yisrael, there's a body of society as well. There's the body of American society. And it was and it still is, a beautiful society with enormous potential. And it has provided a safe haven for religious freedom, for the Jewish community to flourish and prosper in a way that hasn't existed in thousands of years. So, but when we see that it is being destroyed and torn apart, what is taking place is a losis godadu of American culture and American society. It's being torn asunder. It's a losis godadu, just like there's a losis godadu of Klal Yisrael, there's a losis godadu of society in general. And what we should be learning from, if Yaakov could learn from Lavan what not to do, we have to see how horrific it is when people treat each other with unbelievable disdain and the mockery, and the hatred is just dripping, and the demonization and the demoralization. Look what has led to. Look at the horrible forces that are unfolding within American society today, and that should be a motivation for us to commit ourselves ever more to make sure that there's no losis godadu within Klal Yisrael, that we shouldn't get into petty arguments, that we shouldn't be upset about things that are really trivial and not important. If society is being split, is being cut, and is being destroyed, then Klal Yisrael, as a response, has to build itself up. We have to see the bracha, we have to see the har grizim, and we have to be the or l'goyim. We have to be the ones that are inspiration for the nations of the world. We daven constantly for shalom. We say in the end of Shemona Esrei, you say Shem Shalom. In Berchas Kohanim, Yasem L'cha Shalom. In Kaddish, Osa Shalom B'mromav. We sing Shalom Aleichem on Shabbos. We're constantly davening for shalom because bracha is connected to shalom, and we desperately need to have shalom in America, shalom in the Jewish community, and shalom across the entire world. And let us hope in Mirz Hashem that the Rebbeinu Shalom should listen to our tefillos, and we should be able to set a positive example that life is not vulgar, life is not ugly, life is not despicable. On the contrary, life is beautiful, and we should be able to help bring shalom to the world, and in that way our existence should be purposeful and meaningful, and we should live beautiful lives.